It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
Hey, good morning, Freeman. It's good to see you this morning. And
Good
good
to be
morning,
here.
Spence. It's good to see you too. Late, but still good to see you. How's that for a little passive-aggressive scold?
You got the scold in.
I got it in. Good
Oh,
morning.
how are you?
Oh, it's been quite a day. It's been
It
a busy
has.
day.
Me too.
Yeah, lots going on.
Tons.
Crowded roads. That's pretty unusual for the route that I have to take, so I don't know what's going on.
They came out for you. Special.
They did. And you were up in Ojai here this morning?
Nice.
Bright
It's
and early?
a great place to arrive early in the morning. The mountains, the whole fresh scent up there. It's not my usual LA air. There's something about the air. up
You're
there.
in for a, you're breathing different air these days.
I'm breathing different air.
You're in the
these days.
rare air deal.
That's right. Got up in the rare air. So, do we have any Abraham Lincoln quotes today? I just want to know.
For those of you
We wanna
listening,
be consistent.
for those of you listening that are not in on this, we have been running an ongoing Abraham Lincoln Fest
It has been
for probably the last 3-4 weeks.
That's right.
As it happens, there is the perfect Abraham Lincoln quote.
See, I knew I could count on you.
In view of
I
the guest
knew I
that we
could
have
count
today,
on you.
we have the perfect Abraham Lincoln quote.
All right, what is it?
Abraham Lincoln said, "Whatever you are, be a good one." How about that?
That's succinct. I like it.
Isn't that great?
That's
So you know what?
but
I
it's
had
packed.
It is packed, you know. So
Yeah.
let's unpack it a little bit. I had an experience not long ago, a few weeks ago.
Okay.
And we'll thread back to this without any doubt when our guest comes on. I have no doubt. But a few weeks ago, a new business moved into the shopping center, about a couple miles down the road from my house, a boutique coffee place.
Okay.
And I wandered in there, and as I stood waiting for my cappuccino, I watched the owner dealing with somebody coming in wanting a 3-pump cafe mocha. Kid you
All
not,
right.
this is great. This is wonderful.
All right, I'm
So
ready.
he comes in, says, "I want a 3-pump cafe mocha." Now understand that there's a Starbucks 75 yards to the south.
Right.
Just saying.
And they would know how to do a 3-pump
They would know how to
mocha.
do that exactly
Right.
to perfection.
So did your guy know how to do it?
So our guy says, with the most humility you can possibly imagine, he says, "I want you to understand something. I really want you to take this in the proper spirit. What you want is fine, and Starbucks does that really well. What I do here is an expression." This is great. Listen to this. This
I'm
is
listening.
Very
I'm
distinct.
already
This is-
excited.
This is not the sushi Nazi from Seinfeld. This is a whole different
Right.
level of authority.
Yeah.
So the barista, who I've since befriended, Mitch says to this client, he says, "What I do here is an expression of my passion and of my gift and of my talent. It's an art. And what fires me up is when I have an opportunity to share my art and to open people to the delicious gifts of the coffee experience.
Oh, man.
And so I will gladly make you my version of a mocha, but I want you, if you're interested, I want you to dive into the experience of it with me from a place of total humility, something entirely new. And if not, then I think that if what you really want is what you're used to, you would be better served at Starbucks."
How was this received? I'm just curious.
Well, he said it so beautifully,
Okay.
and he said it with such an open heart, and he said it with such a sense of what of who he was and what he was about, such an ownership of his mastery and his excellence, that it was received with an open heart.
Oh, that's fantastic.
The guy said, "I hear you, I understand, and I'm going to Starbucks."
Oh, that's great. Okay, that works.
That does work. But you know what
I
is...
want to taste what Mitch was going to create, though. Did you end up ordering, can I have what you were going to give that guy?
I did.
Okay,
but
good.
We'll thread back to that.
Okay.
I think what's really interesting about this conversation
Yeah.
is that it invites an exploration of what happens once we achieve excellence in an area.
Oh,
It's
it speaks to a lot of things. I mean, that would be one thread. I mean, there's a lot of things in this that strike me right away.
Yeah.
So one is a level of ownership of my own craft and what I do. And what I risk is that some people may not want it. They may want Starbucks, and that's got to be okay with me personally. I mean, I'm just talking about what I do.
Sure.
Like listening to you talk about Mitch and what he does and his level of mastery and his investment in what's specific, the gift that he has to give in the world.
Yeah.
Right? That's how I'm relating to it, because that's
Yeah.
how I work with what
Yeah.
I do, right? And oftentimes I run the risk that someone's not going to like it, or that it'll be misunderstood, or that I'm doing what I do and it's not, people don't really understand what's behind it. They don't get what I've put into it, and I in some way in the past have taken that personally.
Could not be a better opportunity to segue into introducing our guest.
You should do that.
Could not be a better one.
I'm thrilled.
So I am really thrilled today to have on Cutting Edge Consciousness Stewart Emery. Many of our listeners may already be familiar with Stewart. He's considered one of the fathers of the human potential movement. He served as the first CEO of EST, now called Landmark Education. He is the co-founder of Actualizations. You could use a little actualizing, so could I.
Yeah. Well, it's good he's on the show.
He's the, well,
Maybe we can
good,
get that
yeah,
sorted out.
We'll sort the whole thing out before we're finished. He's the best-selling author of Actualizations, You Don't Have to Rehearse to Be Yourself, of Success Built to Last, and many others. Most of all, he's my friend, and I am thrilled to have my friend on the show with us. Stewart, how are you?
Oh, I'm delighted to be here. I love that story about Mitch, and we're doing this book, Whatever You Are, Be a Good One, so I'm going to get the transcription of that story, because it just says so much, so elegantly. So what a gift you two guys have. I hear you drop into your broadcast voice. I don't quite have a broadcast voice with Australian accent. It's really tough.
It's a perfect voice. So
Yeah.
let's talk about this. So I'm curious, what about the story? Because I had my response to it, which is, wow, what that story mirrors to me about my own risking, if you will, being misunderstood in order to be true to myself. And this idea of really taking ownership of what I'm putting out in the world, this be a good one, whatever it is you do, that you really give yourself to it in a particular way. But I'm curious, Stewart, from your perspective, what that means, what that story, what that reflects for you.
Well, it's a great story on the lower levels. I was talking to our mutual friend, Barnet, and I have a friend called Stephen Joseph, and when we're all together or at a party, Stephen and Barnet provide the entertainment, because they go on these long riffs with a variety of Far Eastern and Indian accents. It's hysterical.
Can't do Australian.
No, well, you got me for that.
That's right. That's what we need you for. I was about to say that.
Tag along. But I was talking to Stephen yesterday on a similar vein, and he said, at this stage of my life, and it took me a while to learn this, I go out and I interview clients very carefully to make sure that they're the right fit and I can serve them with what I put out there in the world as an expression of my art as a coach. It's almost the same conversation.
I love that. I love that. Interviewing your clients carefully. That's brilliant.
Because we're doing this little book called Who's in Your Room? And, the basic idea is that imagine that you're going to live your life in a single room. It can be opulent, sizable. But the deal is that the room has one door, which is a one-way door. It's an in but not out, entry but no exit. So whoever comes into the room is there with you for the rest of your life. And if you knew that, would you choose more carefully? Now, people will merely say, well, I can't literally be true. Perhaps not in the physical world in terms of the person literally being in your room for the rest of your life. But in terms of the imprint in the DNA of your mind, it's true. And so, but we won't go into all of that now. But we say what you need to do is have a doorman. And the doorman is briefed in your values and briefed in what matters to you and briefed in what has meaning and what your goals are and what your aspirations and dreams are. And they don't let anybody into the room of your life who doesn't support all of that or who isn't simpatico with it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Barnett and I both need a doorman.
That's right.
I need a flying wedge.
I know. Some of the bouncer too. King Kong comes to mind.
Oh my gosh.
Well, what you say, Stuart, that
But I got to tell you the rest of it. Then I'll shut up. Stephen said, but I took it to another level.
Oh, good. We want more levels. Let's go.
Stephen said, I have trained my doorman as a talent scout. I said, as a talent scout? He said, sure. While he's checking out the line of people trying to get in the room, and some of them are prospective clients, he's looking for people of the talent and are at a place in their life where they could receive the value of the gifts I want to bring to the world.
wow.
And I thought, hallelujah,
Yeah.
I believe.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. The great gift of bringing people into your room who have achieved a level of mastery, of ability, of confidence, is that it changes us. We are honored by those people, and to be honored is to allow them to change us.
Yeah.
In the same way that now, as it happens, you were down here in Southern California not too many weeks ago, and I took you to that coffee shop, and you walked in, and your eyes widened when you saw the La Mazzocca machine, and you met Mitch, the barista, and there is a respect for somebody that is operating with excellence that changes us. It allows us to become more aware of our dignity, more aware of our grace. It allows us to model confidence, and it begs a discussion about what happens, particularly in the area of leadership, when people have moved beyond trying to gain mastery, but have achieved a certain set of mastery. What does it look like when you are Mitch the barista?
Well, I think if we go back to one of the original questions, like, what's that about having the courage to do that? And one of you said, well, I'm kind of a little squirrely about doing that. It's a high level of risk to me.
Yeah.
What we've found in the people we've talked to is that once the person is established in their mastery, they become much more comfortable in their own skin. And they, on some almost primordial level, feel safer in the world, because they've learned that when you're among the best at something, there is always people who want that. And you simply have to make yourself and save yourself for those people.
And so it's a gift.
Yes.
In a sense, it's a gift. When you achieve that level of being good at something, of mastery, what it is that you are sharing by your very presence is a giving quality to others that is not necessarily, quite often is not even transactional. You give for the sake and the joy of giving. Mitch gives his art and his craft in the coffee shop for the love of the doing of it and the love of the sharing of it.
Now I want to throw a butt in here. Can I throw a butt in here?
Sure.
I think that I'm loving this conversation. The challenge, I think, for most people is there is some gap between the what we've called the fragments, the parts of us that are still tend to leap into the driver's seat and take hold of the bus sometimes and steer us maybe in the wrong direction, you know, again, trying to survive and get our needs met and yada, 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 with this self that is capable of brilliance and genius and can embody it with ease. And I think the challenge in there is whatever the divide is, whatever the separation is between those two, is how to marry them, how to blend them in a way. And maybe the word is actualized. I mean, going from the conceptual self to more of an actualized self, where it's more of how we embody it and hold it on a regular basis. I don't know. But that seems to me to be the crux of the challenge, if you will.
Well, the original yes, I agree that's the challenge. And the original meaning of the word actualize, or self-actualize, was to make the divinity of the self real through action.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we called the company we had back in those days, actualization. And there's a lot of conversation these days, a lot of dialogue around, well, you got to do what you're passionate about. And the word passion has just, again, a delicious origin. It literally means that spirit or that essence or that urge or that drive that lives within, that if not expressed becomes a suffering.
Yes.
Repeat that, would you?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Repeat that, please.
Passion is that thing, that spirit, that desire, that creativity, that voice, living within oneself, in the self, in the soul, that should it remain inside and not find expression in the world, it will become a profound suffering.
I want to talk about this. We need to take a quick break. When we get back, I want to talk about how repressing our natural gifts creates all kinds of pain and suffering within our experience. But
So we're going to repress some natural gifts for a moment. We're going to pay a few bills. We'll be right back here, ready to pop.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
You're listening to Cutting Edge Consciousness. This is Barnet Bain with Freeman Michaels and our special guest, Stewart Emery. Before the break, we were repressing a lot of energy, a lot of volatile energy, ready to blow. So, Freeman, you had a point.
well, just the cost of repressing our gifts, talents, and abilities versus finding expression for them. And again, hearkening back to the idea of a risk, that if we really risk going back to the Dorman concept of even risk having beliefs that get expressed. I mean, so much of my programming and the programming of the clients I see is about fitting in and getting by and laying low, and this idea of putting our head up, lifting our chests, and being really present to how we want to show up in the world is a challenge for a lot of folks. And that's sort of where we left off, Stewart. We were sort of talking about the challenge and the divide between the self I know is possible, or I sense is possible, and the self that I've adapted to be vis-a-vis my need for approval and my survival stuff and all of that.
Yes, it's a very interesting statistic that when we were doing the research for Successful Lost, which I think is out there in like 22 languages now, one of the things we came across was that success in life is inversely proportional to the success with which you were socialized in high school.
This is interesting.
People never really learned how to fit in. They end up usually being more successful.
So things look good for me.
Yeah, us high school losers are going to do great in life.
Yeah, they voted me the least likely to succeed. I was a real hit.
Well, that makes sense because, again, the hit, if you will, of the accolades. You don't know my background, but I had a moment in time, brief moment as a soap star. And it was the accolades were a little addictive in spite of the fact that I didn't enjoy the work. I didn't like the show. I didn't really enjoy my part, and the script seemed stupid to me. But I don't think I would have given up the role because the accolades and the money and whatever else and everyone telling me how great I was doing felt good. And of course, the role ended for various reasons, none of which is really important, which I look back on and go, oh, thank God. I'm really thrilled that whole sort of success paradigm, if that's what one wants to call it, got broken because it wasn't going to ultimately work out for me.
But but that's such a common story. Stephen Joseph and Barnet tell this joke about this Jewish guy who works in the circus and he has a pretty lowly job. Basically, has to clean out the animal cages. So he spends his whole life shoveling manure, elephant manure, horse manure, lion manure, a little bit dangerous. And he's complaining to his other friend one day in a bar, and says, well, how much do they pay you to do this? And the guy says, this goes back a long time in the circus, 25 cents an hour. He said, well, have you ever thought of quitting? And the guy looks at his friend like he's an idiot and says, what do you mean, and give up show business?
That's great.
and I think a lot of us just don't want to give up show business.
We don't. And to collapse the long trail between this sort of disintegrated bonsai tree version of show business and the real deal.
That's it.
The trail itself is the scent of passion. So, but to be locked in a diminutive version of it is crippling and will build up all kinds of repressed ideas. But the degree to which you can collapse that trail and move closer and closer to more felt sense experience of that passion is the degree to which, as you have said before, Stewart, the degree to which you are able to feel like you are more fully alive. That aliveness and that passion are one.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the key to it. There's a wonderful series shot at Skywalker Ranch in Lucas Valley, when that's where it was, and it was Bill Moyer interviewing Joseph Campbell. And Joe was in his 80s. Actually, was dying at the time of cancer, but you would not have known that. And Bill Moyer, who takes himself a bit seriously from time to time, said, well, Joseph, I mean, surely aren't people seeking some profound sense of meaning in their life? And Joseph says, no, I don't think so. I think what people want is a great experience of being alive while they still are. And that's so consistent with my own personal experience. And I notice that people, when you get Mitch talking about coffee, he goes back to where the specialty coffee scene started in Seattle, where people like Skoma has Cafe Vivace, where La Mazzocca was, where Sonesso is, and La Mazzocca still is, where Starbucks started and actually were in the coffee business rather than the flavored milk business with 3 pumps of whatever.
Right.
If you can't tell, Stewart is a passionate.
I want to say something about this because we're in a very good. This is a moment in time where something that you were alluding to can be, I think, illustrated more broadly. The scent of passion is what you called it, Barnet. And I think one of the things we find a lot in our community, and Stewart, I'm sure you've heard this a lot, is people wanting to find their passion. And there's this big effort behind it. And what I think you're pointing out is it's not necessarily so complicated. In fact, it's probably evident if we were really paying attention. And it has to do with this natural attraction, in your case, you and Mitch like the coffee. But I mean, those are the things that liven us up, and how to really cultivate that level of intensity in our lives. The passion doesn't have to be at least in my experience, I mean, or from my perspective. We don't need to make it so complicated, this whole finding my passion.
And it doesn't have to be grand.
That's right.
And I find that you can invest, passion is a resource which you invest. It's not something you're looking outside to get it from.
It's an inside job
thing. And I'm taking delivery. We have another friend, Dave Ellis, who has a barbecue called a Big Green Egg, and his wife's a vegan, so he doesn't get to cook pulled pork and brisket and things like that, baby back ribs. So it's sitting looking forlorn on his deck, and I said, "Hey, Dave, you're hurting the sensibilities of that big green egg.
And put it on your deck where it can be inundated with love and attention."
Saturday morning. But this gets better. So now I'm going to get into barbecues, and my wife's complaining about how divided the country is over this election. I said, there's no political solution to our future. I'm focusing on something I can get better at, which is barbecue.
Oh, that is great. Now you have to invite Dave and his wife. Is it Tricia? Is that his wife?
Tricia,
no.
yes.
Yeah, David, Tricia. We're coming up.
We're coming up, too. We get them all over. We like them.
So fast forward, Stephen's son is opening another restaurant in New York, and Stephen says, "You're going to come to the opening. I got a guy I want you to meet." And this is a guy who made his money writing comedy. He did all of the Cosby shows and a few others. And when he made his money, I said, "So what does he do now to keep himself off the streets in New York?" He said, "Well, he doesn't have to do a job to do that." He said, "But what he's into is barbecue." This guy has got this barbecue trailer that he keeps stored in New York, and in the season, he goes around to the various scenes where they have barbecue competitions, like they have World Barista Championships. And it's this whole circuit. And the guy's totally passionate about barbecue. So I'm going to go back and interview him for Whatever You Are, Be a Good One, because this is what I've found. Whatever people decide they're going to invest this resource called passion in, well, whatever they're willing to use as a vehicle for their own creativity and self-expression, and whatever they're willing to commit to by developing what we call a deliberate practice, which means you're doing it with one eye and one significant part of you committed to getting progressively better at it, and you're committed to getting feedback from the world or from wherever to let you know you are getting better. And what this does for one is it also enhances your ability to find pleasure in your life. I was given a book by a nun. Unlikely event.
That's pretty unlikely, yeah.
That sounds like the punchline for a joke, Stewart.
Stewart was given a book by a blind nun once.
Right.
The book is called The Decline of Pleasure.
Wow.
Oh, interesting. That's an interesting for a nun to give you. This is complex.
This is a nun who is Dean Emeritus of St. Benedictine College, and she built this thing. She's an amazing lady. She's 80-something. And so over a bottle of Glenlivet one night...
Oh, I love it.
we're sitting there. I mean, what I love about my life is I get to talk to really cool people about, their passions. And I said, so, heavens, why did you become a nun? And she said, well, if you were born in Minnesota, when I was, the choice were to be a housewife and had a tribe of kids. And if you wanted to run a business, the only route to that was to become a nun. And then she said, I got to run hospitals and university and all these things. And she said, that's what it was about for me.
Wow.
But she said...
But she took pleasure. It was a giving
really
experience.
It's important for people to keep track of the simple pleasures in life.
As you, what I hear you saying, Stewart, is that as you attend with a committed focus, developing an intimate relationship with whatever it is that you're committing to, that giving itself affords pleasure at the same time as it develops mastery.
Yeah.
And that you're willing to be stirred, this element of the excitement underneath. Even talking about barbecue, I can tell that this is something that stirs you, even if you've never, there's something about it that is exciting and draws you, and that's a powerful thread energetically to offer in the world, that there's always something that I can get excited about.
Always something, and I read somewhere once, it might have been Krishnamurti or some great sage said, the trick to life is to lose your innocence without replacing it with cynicism, but retaining instead always the ability to be filled with wonder.
That's fantastic. That
Beautiful.
is absolutely
Isn't that
fantastic.
That's fantastic.
And I think
I've
that's what I'm
distilled
grateful
it down.
about my life. I have never lost the ability to be filled with wonder. And what fills me with wonder is human excellence and beauty in any field. Whether it's, Mitch was talking to me about what his experience is standing behind that beautiful Amazoka. It's been lovingly polished and restored to its total glory, pulling what's called a God shot. Most people don't know that the hardest thing to do in coffee consistently is to pull a great shot of espresso. When you get a great shot, they call it a God shot, because what happens is you take a sip and you go, oh my God.
Oh my God.
And he unpacked so generously the experience of it. Stewart, of course, knows well what the experience of it is, but I am a newbie to this. And so he explained that at the right pressure, at the right temperature, and at the right grind, it would unlock the natural sugars of the bean and some of the joy, some of the excellence.
But here's the thing for me. I found myself that when you're getting close to some level of mastery in something, you learn by osmosis, by being in the presence of a master.
Yeah.
Because I came back from 2 visits to Mitch, and my shots now that I've been, tuning for the last couple of years, my shots are as good as any I've tasted anywhere.
Well, when you put in a shot of Kahlua with it.
Yeah, you can always juice it up. No, I think there's what I love that you were talking about is how you get excited about excellence. And I have this experience. The writer William Zinsser, who wrote a book called On Writing Well, which is one of my favorite books.
Oh, I love that book. Yeah.
And he talks about this one author who he first was introduced to the author because he wrote a book about baseball, and William Zinsser has a thing about baseball. But then his next book was a book about ants. And he said, I don't care about ants, but I love that this guy cares about ants. And I love how excited he gets about the ants. And he said, and I loved his book on ants. Same principle that you're talking about. It's the excitement about excellence, about people who are passionate, and how much, and I know I feel the same way, I'm drawn to that just to be a witness to what
It's infectious.
It's infectious. That's the word.
Yeah. And, I coach not very many people anymore, but at any given time, I take a couple of handfuls of clients, maybe a dozen, maybe a bit less. But no matter what they do, I always say, okay, as part of the interview process, tell me something that you're good at. Tell me something that you love to do. Tell me something that works about you. So we talk about those things, and we make sure that every day of their life, the person commits to doing something that they do best every day. They may not spend a day doing it, but spend some minutes per day doing what they do best every day. That's
a message to our listeners right there. That's fantastic. I want people to hear that, take that in, and personally, that's something that's an offer to me too, to take that in and make that an expression.
So there's something else that there's another area of excellence and mastery that I happen to know about you, Stewart. That once upon a time, you're going to have to account for this to our very wide and growing audience.
Go ahead.
Once upon a time, I think back in the 70s, you hosted a television talk show in Los Angeles on human sexuality.
Oh, yeah. God, there's some stories from there, Barnet, I tell you.
Well, this just means you're going to have to come back because we're running out of time.
In studio.
Yeah, we're going to have to get you. That's going to be a good one. We can probably line up an audience for that one.
We can get you in studio with a good stiff cappuccino.
That's right, from Mitch's.
I travel for coffee. What can I tell you?
We got to break off now. I want to leave you with one thought as an add-on to everything that you've said. When was the last time that you did something for the first time?
Yeah, that's a great thought. We should leave with the question in mind.
Let's leave it hanging. I am so grateful that you took the time to spend with us this morning.
Is there anything upcoming we can announce? Anything going on with you, Stewart, that we can tell our audience to be looking for? I mean, we know your books.
We got some
books.
books.
Anything exciting that you'd like to announce in this moment? You can say no, but...
Well, no, I wasn't going to run a commercial. Jack Campbell and I are looking to take 15 people to an island off the coast of Belize and do a one-week retreat with them shortly. So,
wow. That is cool.
So we want folks to,
what website
to have a heads up on
to?
that.
Yeah. Can we send them to a website for that? Is there information out yet, or do you want us to post that when it becomes available?
If they can reach me at Stewart@stewartemery.com.
Okay, great.
Or you can contact Stewart through us here at the show, or on our website, or on our Facebook page, and all of the usual places.
So, Stewart, thanks so much for joining us today.
It's so nice to meet you, sir.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And for those of you listening, stay tuned because we'll be right back after these messages.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnet Bain. Just got done talking to Stewart Emery, an amazing man with an amazing story. And I love the fact that he is so fired up about getting fired up.
Yeah, he is. And for those of you watching on YouTube or elsewhere, Success Built to Last, Creating a Life That Matters. I love this book.
You do. It's a great book. And I love how it tracks what it means to be successful, because in large measure, it's this level of passion, this level of connection to a purpose and a meaning that that recontextualizes everything else.
But I want to point out something more as a question than anything else.
Okay.
Or more as an observation and a question than anything else. As I poured through Success Built to Last, Stewart and his co-authors, they have spoken with just this incredible list of leaders, and most of I don't think any of them, I was going to say most, but I don't think any of them, Warren Buffett and Bill Clinton and Maya Angelou and Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and on and on and on.
Richard Branson, Steve Jobs, and many others.
They have all reached a certain point in life that in in the various psychological and esoteric traditions are known as the far side of the shadow years, the time of the double.
Yeah.
They have all, and Stewart himself, they have all reached a certain point of inner knowing and the making of peace, the end of striving and the claiming of excellence. Mm-hmm. They are no longer climbing ladders of success in order to prove, to vindicate, to conquer. It is, as we've used this language in the past, post-heroic. Mm-hmm. They are now exploring what underlies achievement. It is a victory that transcends winning, a victory that is greater than winning.
Absolutely.
And all of the folks that they have interviewed here are all at that particular stage in life. I don't see that there are any young folks. And this is not good or bad. I think it illustrates a certain truth, maybe, that has to do with the cadences and the arcs of being alive. That is, when we are a little younger, perhaps we're driven, we're motivated by certain types of desires and expectations, and that over the course of living, we gain a different set of modulators and perspectives. So all of these folks are incredibly passionate, and they are all in the mid of life.
I like it.
I don't know. Would you? Does that trigger anything for you, or?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting because we've talked about this, off air and some on air, about this sense of it's possible to move into an operating system that's less driven by what we've called the second story, right? This whole striving and this whole notion that these folks are past proving themselves. That's not the stage they're at, and there's an opening. The question I guess I have is, and maybe that's what your question is provoking, is at what point does that click occur? And is it just one of those things that's appropriate at a certain phase of life, and maybe even an age in terms of when it consistently shows up for people, when they're no longer in the push and they really can accept their gifts, talents, and abilities? Or can it occur in someone much younger, vis-a-vis the wisdom that's shared in this book? That would be because I think being exposed to it has tremendous value for people at any age. That just the notion that there's a point where one tips into a sense of comfort with the parts of them, the fragments, and a comfort with the parts of them that is, let's say, genius. And they're really okay with all of that. And the reasons for doing things, the motivations, to use an acting term, is more generous. It's more about what we can give versus get, and it's open to greater and greater possibilities. Everything doesn't have to be crunched down to that sort of second story. How do I win?
How do I overcome my originating circumstances?
Right.
How do I overcome? How do I compensate? How do I marry the girl, lose the weight, become the president, whatever it is.
So
as
to
opposed
introduce
to how do I serve and
That's it.
how do I bring the passion that Stewart is talking about, the excitement, the authority that comes out of a practice that has become so embodied that by one's very presence we gift others, whether it's behind a coffee machine, a barista, or it is at the front of a company, or it is in whatever expression wherever it takes expression.
So can I give the answer?
Yes.
Because you gave it to me this morning.
Mm-hmm.
You, and I hope I can share this on air, you shared with me something you were struggling with, and then it broke this morning.
Mm-hmm.
And the language, I'm not getting this precisely right, is you said something to the effect of, I loved it enough where it lifted. I held it in enough compassion and enough the fragmented aspect, the part of you that was triggered and got all fired up, and then all the fear thoughts and all the stuff that emanate from that triggering event. But you went into meditation, you did some ritual, you went into a relationship with this part of you that didn't dismiss it, but then also didn't overemphasize it, allowed for it. And you said, the language you said was, I loved it enough, and then it lifted.
That's beautiful.
And then things started to flow again. I think that's a beautiful piece to offer to folks, because I think that's it. I mean, I think that what has happened is there's a level of self-acceptance with all these people, that it doesn't mean that they don't recognize there's still these fragmented aspects, but they really have grown to a maturity where they can, as you say, love it enough.
They have what attracts me about this work and about so much of this area of Stewart's work
Yeah.
is the leadership piece. It is an entirely different understanding of what it means to lead.
Mm-hmm.
It is leadership by modeling.
Yes.
It is not by managing. It is a leadership that comes out of the sharing of an excellence, of a confident competency.
Mm.
Where there is no competency, there can be no leadership. So this is not a striving, struggling, looking, learning competency, although learning never stops. But it reaches a point that it is so embodied that by the presence of it, one inspires and empowers others. And then there's another piece, and this, he's probably going to be listening to this, so I'm going to be called on the carpet for this later. So forgive me now, Stewart. But there is a piece here that I have noticed among the leaders that who are operating in this way, that I can discern operating in this way. They are willing to, they are big enough to lean on others.
Mm.
They are confident enough. They are large enough to lean on other people. I'll even go so far as to say sometimes they are large enough and big enough to be small.
That's fantastic.
And that empowers others. I think it's Lao Tzu, and I'm gonna mangle this. Stephen Josephs he's also gonna writhe when he hears me mangle this. The most effective leaders are those of whom it is said, we did it ourselves.
Yeah, where they've given up the attachment to being praised, that they've really seen the larger whole.
Those who have followed,
Larger,
I've missed that piece. For those who have followed, they can say of themselves that we did it ourselves. So invisible is the leadership.
That's it. Well, there's also another piece here. I hope I can articulate this, but I want to go back to the loving it enough, the dark light. So there's a point, and I don't totally own this, I just understand it conceptually, where if I can own what might be considered the dark aspects, the shadow aspects, with a certain level of compassion, it goes from being my adversary to becoming my ally, these aspects of me, the light, the dark light. So I don't want to confuse people, but so much of my life and so much of personal growth, as you and I both know, is it starts in this second story of trying to fix something that we see as flawed in ourselves, and we got to fix that. And once we fix that, we'll be okay, right? That's the premise of it, which is really resistance, which ultimately feeds the beast and makes it bigger than it has to be. It's a way of holding it. You said this to me. You said, I don't want to over-identify with it, nor do I want to under-identify it. I want to hold it in the right light, whatever the trigger was, right? You said, I don't want to make a lot out of it and create a whole story about it, but in the same way, I don't want to dismiss it. I want to hold it in a generous way. And then my sense is, it becomes, my ability to do that is the dark light. I can hold my own shadow aspects as an ally, as a part of my experience as I go out and make my offer in the world. I personally believe I'm less reactive to what I see showing up as expressions of me that I previously didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole,
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm calling it a dark light,
Mm-hmm.
that we have the light, which is so beautiful and so great to have a purity of expression, and that's so great. But even the muddled part can be held in a particular way, which makes it valuable in the process of expressing my passion and giving my gift in the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very much so, very much so. Over and not beyond it, but over and included in it.
Mm-hmm.
How's that for a
Nice.
mixed metaphor?
No, you
Over
did-
and yet included.
Yeah.
So in that kind of little paradoxical framing,
Yeah.
there is also a light in the darkness itself.
That's it.
I find that I can become so frustrated or so disillusioned or so angry or so confused or whatever it is, whatever the particular poison is, the poison of the day,
Right. Boys of the
whatever
day.
that is. If I drill into it, eventually I can find a light in it. There is a power in it.
Yes.
I can find in that frustration
Yes.
such a explosive, first there's a helplessness, and eventually there's such an explosive rage in it. Or maybe there is such a tenacity to it. Wow, I have been pushing this like Sisyphus, pushing this particular boulder up a hill for close to 60 years.
There's a gift in it.
And if nothing else, inside that struggle, there is a tenacity.
That's right.
So if I can pull the tenacity,
The gift.
if I
Yeah.
simply can use the respond and be respectful of the tenacity that is involved in there, that is an energy that I can use elsewhere.
That's fantastic.
But these things talked about are nowhere, they're not remotely as compelling as when somebody sees it modeled. You know, when you hang out on Stewart's deck while he's barbecuing,
Yeah.
it's fun, it's light, and when it is modeled in the living of life, not in the tutorial of life, it's an energy that just raises all ships.
Yeah.
It raises yachts and it raises dinghies.
Now, I'm not disrespecting Stewart. I agree with you. He's a wonderful man.
He'll come after you. He's Australian.
Yeah,
so
I
you
know
better watch
that
yourself.
with that barbecue stick.
Don't mess around.
But look, I'm going to reflect this back to you, and I'll even hold it for myself.
Yeah.
That in the part that we're not playing guru, we're working this out in real time, and we're showing up, and we have enough moments where we can. This is not spoken of theoretically. I mean, again, I'll be humble in the sense that I recognize that I don't walk all the time with the ability to hold the shadow aspects in this sort of light way that I'm seeing the gifts and values in the challenges, but enough so that I feel like this is my job.
It is,
to
and that's the
model
beginning.
it.
That is not the beginning of. That is a hallmark and a characteristic
Yes.
of the kinds of excellence and mastery we're talking about, as distinct from vanity.
Yes.
Or
It's just that you and
hubris.
I
It's
have
when you own it. Yes,
yeah,
I
but
am-
you and I have a tendency to keep putting it out there like it's so very far. At least I do, and I think you do too. That we put it out there and it's so far and it's still reaching and we're still reaching. And at what point do we go, okay, reaching's part of the game, and I'm not playing that angle as if
As
I
much.
don't own it. Right? Let's just own it, because it's
Yeah.
not an arrival place. It's an understanding and a comprehension that I think we have well enough to speak about it and know that in moments we own it better than others. And it's great to have other folks in the door that we let in the door, our doorman let in the door to our room, as it were, that can do it as well. That's what this show's about.
absolutely.
That's what this
is-
conversation
That
is
is what
about.
the whole show is about, and
Yeah.
to own a level of competency is, again, that is not vanity.
Yes.
To disown a level of confidence, a level of competence, is a vanity. There is a hubris there. There comes a point where you recognize and you own your competency.
Yeah, so Stewart's in your room. That's a good guy to have in your room.
That's a great guy to have.
But we
in my
do
room.
need a doorman. I'm just saying it might be good. I'm just
We could
kidding.
use a doorman.
Yeah. But no, look, I guess.
Hey, Spence, you want to?
Could you handle that for us?
You know any doormen that we
Some
can?
big guys.
Norman the doorman.
Yeah. But look, I want to sum this up, and I want to obviously say goodbye to our audience because I think we run out of time, which Spence will nod his head and confirm. Thanks, Spence. But just to get back to the idea that
Coast to Coast coming up next.
Get Coast to Coast coming up next here on KVTA and KKZZ. Now I don't know what the hell I was going to talk about.
You were talking about the doorman coming up next.
Listen, we just hope that you keep tuning in, hang out in our room with us, and we'll keep having Stewart and other folks
We'll
to talk
enlarge
about
the
these
room.
amazing concepts. Thanks for listening. Keep tuning in to Cutting Edge Consciousness.